Sure.
Thank you for joining us for the Great Reset Botswana Dialogue, and an even bigger thank you for your patience. We had a bit of technical difficulty, but all's well that ends well, and we're live, so that is it ending well. Welcome to the Great Reset Botswana Dialogues once again. It's brought to you by the Global Shapers Community, Gaborone. The Global Shapers Community is a World Economic Forum youth initiative and a network of young people driving dialogue, action, and change. This session is brought to you and powered by Stageworks and House 97 Media. I am today's moderator, Patukili Sidze. The Great Reset is a commitment by jointly and urgently building the foundation of our economic and social systems for a more fair and sustainable and resilient future. The Great Reset Botswana Dialogue will be a series of 11, will be an 11-part series with around the concept of the Great Reset in the concept of Botswana. In today's session, we focus on unpacking the theme and what it would mean for Botswana. Joining me in today's conversation is Global Shaper Vince Morawang, Mr. Ukitanye Haoukhane, the Executive Director and Senior Consultant at InnoLead. And joining us on via Zoom is Pusetso Morabedi, the Founding Director of Botswana Center for Public Integrity. If you're streaming, please also feel free to join in the conversation by commenting on the live stream or on your social media page of choice using the hashtag GreatResetBW. So first, I'm going to speak to Vince. What's your understanding of the Great Reset? And if you could unpack it a bit further for us.
Right. Thank you so much for having me, Pato. Good afternoon to all the viewers out there watching us via technology. Right. So the Great Reset is a conversation that was started by the World Economic Forum. I think for for those that don't know, that have no idea about what it's really all about, Global Shapers is actually an organization that is affiliated to the World Economic Forum in terms of where we source our mandate from. Now, Professor Klaus Schwab, who is the director of the World Economic Forum, has actually authored a book called The Great Reset. Now, what exactly is the Great Reset, right? If you are having a trouble with a device, let's say you have a cell phone or you have a calculator and it's giving you problems, it's malfunctioning, if I may, your first instinct would be to
again is, as a shaper now, your job is to be a player, not a fan. And by a player, we need to get involved in what I call meaningful projects. When you do your national strategy here, when you do your national strategies here, I really need you to pick what I call meaningful projects. There's people out there in the very remote areas that are not digitally wired. There's people out there that are still socially challenged in many ways.
Not to cut you off, but so the Great Reset is a commitment to jointly and urgently build the foundations of our economic and social systems for a more fair, sustainable, and resilient future, like you just mentioned. But what are these foundations? What does a more fair, sustainable, and resilient future look like? But practically, so what would you want to see to say this is a more fair future, this is a more sustainable future? What would the tangibles be?
Yeah, there's a question that I should be asking you, but again, being a rhetorical person that I am, there is this other two words. Actually, I'm going to use 4 words. One of them is called a world of abundance, and then a mentality of scarcity. This COVID has exposed a lot of things. Economically, we're not benefiting. Socially, we're not benefiting. Health, we're not benefiting. Food security, energy security. So a meaningful way is now, I want the citizens, and to start with the shapers, is let's go and get involved in food production. Let's go and get involved in technological advancement. I'm not expecting you to bring sophisticated gadgets, but again, I'm saying as a shaper, why are kids in Namasere not going to school now? Can't we find a partner with the corporate world? You talk about corporate citizens now. Can't we partner with them, find little gadgets that we can put at the school there, and then kids continue with school? No excuse with COVID. So it's just a little start that we can get involved in terms of technology, food production. Just go into Google from here and check out our import bill.
8 billion.
Yeah. Out of that, we are all complaining that we don't have a job, we don't have this, government doesn't bring this, but the opportunity is right there in the import bill. Pick just one line in the import bill and say, I'm going to play in here.
So let's take it beyond the conversation. If we're taking internet further, then we're bringing more people into the conversation. And when we're having conversations like this, when we highlight on the import bill, someone in, like you said, in Namasere knows that, oh, then there's this, and this is the corner that I can participate in. Who said so? Can you hear us now?
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Great. So, moving on from the question that I asked you earlier, the Great Reset will require a new social contract, which would be centered on human dignity, social justice, and where societal progress does not fall behind economic development. What does a new social contract look like, and how do we achieve that? And maybe if you could first start by explaining what a social contract is.
All right. First of all, thank you for having me. I think I'm really honored in that I'm not in the city, and you continue to still have me online to join this very important conversation. So thank you very much. Wow, when I got the invitation, I looked at the concept note, a lot of questions came to mind, particularly underlining the expression social contract. Now, I had to ask myself, but do we know what a social contract is? Have we ever had a conversation as a country, as a society, on any kind of contract, apart from your lease contract and the contract that you get from work and the contract that you get when you join working for government, have we ever really engaged in a conversation on social contract? Or we're just now throwing this concept to people who don't necessarily know what it is? And my answer wasn't a clear yes, that we've engaged enough, or that our government or state has engaged enough on what a social contract is. And I thought, wow, it is actually great that Global Shapers Botswana has started this. I mean, as a part of a bigger agenda with the World Economic Forum. This is great in that now people are starting to really ask themselves questions of where they want to go, of what is more important. Is the human more important, or is it economics important, or are we both important? Are we using economic development as a tool for people to have better lives, to have decent jobs? Or do we need to really go inward and ask ourselves of the contract to have moving forward? I think the contract that we've been working with is a contract written for us. It's not a contract that we have set up ourselves as a people in the country. How we intend to live together in accordance with any agreement, be it rules and regulations that we already have in our legislation. Have we had a part in the drafting, in the reviewing, in the removing, in the adding of whatever provisions we have in our agreements is a question that we need to now start asking ourselves. Like, what establishes our moral and political rules of behavior? What has established those rules before? And moving forward, are we going to be party to the group or groups that come up with new rules? Indeed, we need new rules. This question really is, it is asking us, because now we're at a crossroads, it is asking us which path to take moving forward. How are we going to live? And do the rules that we have still make sense, or do we need to review the rules? When I watched a short video on the Great Reset, a lady mentioned that the reset needs to happen in our systems. And I paused and I said, but how do systems reset? Systems that are created by people, for people, shouldn't we reset our mindset as a people and come up with institutions and their systems that work for us for a more dignified humanity, and for promoting social justice and that society that does not fall behind economic development. So the social contract is really us coming up with rules and questioning, asking ourselves, do we need to do away with the old rules? Do we need to review the old rules? Or do we need just new rules altogether? What do we need? And these are questions that every Motswana must ask of themselves. And these are questions that the world must ask. If we talk about global commons, what does that mean? And how do we, in a small country in the southern part of Africa, how do we even benefit to anything that is global? How do we do that? So in answering your question, really, I can only say that for now, but also say this is a conversation that is asking us to really introspect in how we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that you moved it from not only youth, but the individual, and not only the individual, but the individual mentally, internally. Would you like to throw in?
Yeah, I wanted to throw in, thanks Puses for that angle. I think what I'm reading from here is that we've been measuring quality of life from an economic index. Now we need to introspect a little bit and say, what is quality of life? Let's talk again to sustainability. Let's talk to inclusiveness. Let's talk to dignity. Let's talk to food on the table. Let's talk to the morality between more holistic. So if you are on the economic scale, only a few % of the population will be called I don't know, they have got the quality of life. But if we reset our measuring stick to the simple living with the environment, living with your neighbor, nice meal, nice education, less fighting, that is what now a social contract should be focusing on.
You know, as you say that, then it brings the conversation to another part. I saw something earlier this week that said the people cannot eat the GDP. And it was zooming in on some of the problems that have been brought up as COVID-19 has settled in. And then now looking at the global health crisis being the COVID-19 pandemic that has laid bare long-standing ruptures in our economics, in our economies and societies, and created a social crisis that urgently needed decent and meaningful jobs, to say the least. Do we see, how do we see and feel the crisis as Botswana? Where are these jobs going to come from? These solutions to the problems that have been highlighted by COVID-19. Where do you, Vincent, think we can start to look to?
Right. Thank you, Pato. So first, I think, let me just say you are absolutely right about, I like that statement, the people cannot eat the GDP. It's not a joke. You shouldn't take that lightly. The reason why there needs to be a reset of the social contract, as we may, is the modern world actually has a lot of inconsistencies. It has a lot of inadequacies and a lot of contradictions. So I'll give you an example, just adding on to Mr. Gaogane's point on, the economic matrices that we have used to measure progress. We've been too focused on speed of growth. We've been too focused on, the numeric or arithmetic part of things as compared to the quality of things. And I'll give you a very quick example. We in Botswana, we clap our hands for ourselves because we have an 88% literacy rate, right? It's a very nice number. It's good. But when you go onto the ground and say, so are these people that are educated, are they employed? They're not. So you have two diametrically opposing statistics that show you that you're working hard on one end, but on the other hand, when it comes to something real, like a real job, you have 37% youth unemployment, right? If I can give you another example, it will be on GDP per capita, right? Botswana has, you say, Botswana is an upper middle income country. And what do we look at? We look at the GDP, we look at the GDP per capita, which is about $8,000, right? It doesn't mean, it means that we take the GDP, you divide it by the number of people, everyone can get $8,000. But do you have $8,000? You don't, right? So the opposite of that would be, we have a high per capita GDP, but we have the third highest income inequality in the world. So the truth of the matter is, those are also two very diametrically opposing statistics. There's a lot of statistics that I can give. For instance, even in terms of agriculture, our net spend in agriculture has increased over the years, right? Into social grants, as well as policies and programs that are meant to help us produce more food and become food secure. But however, our net production has reduced, right? Because fewer and fewer people are going to agriculture. Agriculture is, something for people that are way past their prime. Half of the farmers in this land are more than the age of 60, right? So these are things that you look and you're like, okay, but we're spending more on agriculture, yet the output is becoming less and less. So I think that these contradictions, sort of tell us that let's move away from the numbers. Let's talk about quality. And just to continue on that point, is quality is really about the type of life that people are living. Is it full of hardship, or is it a life that is filled with prosperity and all the likes? We rank very low in terms of the happiness index. I don't know if you know about the happiness index. It's not by mistake, right? People are generally unhappy. So now, with all these things that are happening in the current world that are affecting real lives and real people, what happens is, as a young person who in my 30 years of existence have never seen the prosperity that is being spoken of because I'm not experiencing it, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a shift in ideology, which says, if you tell me that democracy is good, I'm going to ask you, how is it good? Because I don't see it, being good for me. If you tell me about, just going out to vote or any other thing that as a young person I'm required to do, I'm going to tell you that, that thing does not matter to me. And that's where we get a lot of apathy. We get a lot of shift away from, liberalism, and people now are thinking, maybe if we were ruled by one person for 50 years, it would be better. I'm telling you that ideologies are shifting, and they're shifting because of the way that, disruption has happened in the modern world. Technology has taken away jobs, therefore we need to rethink our education, and we need to move quickly, and things like that. So I'd say that these jobs would come from a general shift in our thinking and how we approach fiscal policies and other policies.
Yeah, I think with that, it's a thing of there's no limit to the areas of our lives that the Great Reset will impact. We won't just say we're now going to bring in technology. It's a thing of this might then mean we're questioning the very ideology of democracy. Is it working? Where is it not there? How is that doing? So I like the layers that you've presented. And then once again, if you're joining us on Facebook, this conversation is brought to you by the Global Shapers Gaborone Hub, empowered by Stageworks and House 1957 Media. Please share your thoughts on the comments on what the panel is saying, or feel free to respond with to share your own response to any of the questions that I'm sharing. And then now moving to...
I actually wanted to piggyback a bit on what you just said. What you need to commend the nation for over the years is the country has really invested on our education. We're all very educated and everything. You put it at 88%.
Yeah.
Now, we need to move from this capacity now to capability. We need to move from certificates to doing things. That is the next shift now. And I was talking earlier about policies, SMMEs and everything. The government really needs to now drive. I know the CEEPs and all that. We need to drive the capacitation. I mean, not just education. Let's do it. Let's get the people, the youth, the companies to do it.
That's actually something that I then wanted us to branch off into. We started a little late, but
we will still end on time, in respecting that we had carved out this time for this conversation. Moving over to the solutions. Usetso, you highlighted the challenges she highlighted the challenges with the social contract and how it came to be. You highlighted some of the challenges in terms of education and GDP. You highlighted some of the challenges in terms of inclusiveness. Now, looking at solutions, looking at if we're sitting here, what are we doing after this? If someone is listening, what are they doing after this? What are the shovel-ready or quick wins or low-hanging fruit? So something that we can do to start the momentum and get the ball rolling. What can we do in Botswana that can lay the foundation for this? Maybe if you could highlight two solutions. I'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, there's a lot of solutions. One of the solutions that we need to appreciate is that education has since moved on. The curricula as we find it, I like this logic of soccer that I put in. The old striker used to be this big man who could outmuscle everybody. Today's striker is a little nippy man who can go between spaces. So today, the education system has evolved. Let's start bringing a lot of entrepreneurship, innovation. So digital connectivity and wiredness, being a global player. Don't think about your home village anymore. talk to somebody in China, talk to somebody in the Americas. So that's one of the things. It's just the skill set. I'm gonna call you an LOL generation. You guys are getting yourself wired every day by trying to adapt to the new ways. The federation, the government, the systems, the corporate world need to move fast enough to accommodate today's societal problems. I don't know, Vince, if you've got anything there.
Vince, would you like to add on to that? So we're looking at solutions, but low-hanging fruits that that can just start the momentum going.
Right. Over and above education and just the shift in the way that we educate ourselves is, I think that we, as a country generally, we need data-backed decision-making. So on all aspects, not just education. For instance, I'll give you an example, even in terms of our exports, right? So we as a country, someone gave an example that Botswana exports beef to the EU and China, I don't know where else, the USA, and then imports crude oil from somewhere outside the continent. I don't know where that is. And then right next door, Angola, who's not so far from us, I'm showing you from the Ngoma border gate, it should be like 100 k's or so, and you're in Angola. They import their beef from Brazil, and you know they produce crude oil and they export it outside, right, outside the continent. So this brings into context the issue of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, the AFCTA, which is currently being developed. And I'm happy that we signed it. Why? Because especially as an African country, the idea of collaboration, the concept of collaboration is what will help us create jobs as quickly as possible in this country, and perhaps even, you know, help us improve on a lot of other sectors. So, you know, collaboration between nations in Africa, perhaps that is one of the first places that we can also look at. The second one is the uptake of innovation and things that actually solve problems, right? So we can pump all the money into education and, you know, trying to get kids to be as innovative as possible. But if society does not take up those innovations and actually apply them, then there's no use. For instance, a move away from manual systems. There's a lot of people in this country that are able to develop applications, that are able to develop systems and all that. But unfortunately, because I'm as an entrepreneur who's running a business, I'm not willing to give you 100,000 and say, develop this type of system for me. I'd rather buy something that has already been done. So the uptake of innovations, the support of innovations and things like that, those are just some of the things that we need to change. Obviously, like Mr. Oji has said, there's quite a lot. But I think those are the places that we can start potentially.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, I'm going to touch base on your World Economic Forum things. One of the things is being green. Yeah. Our parents grew food, stored food, never went hungry. We complain about land. I don't think we really have a case. No, we don't have a case. We are in a country with a 4 or 5 land tenure system. You've got the lands where you grow crops. You've got the cattle post. You've got the village. You've got the city plot. I know people are crying saying there is no land. Elsewhere in the world, somebody is owning a 4 meter by 4 meter space in a 50-meter story. That's all they got. So if you really want to produce food, we've got enough land here.
Yeah.
And to produce green food, not genetically modified. We can say we're a desert, but having 400 millimeters of rain, we can harvest the water there. We can harvest groundwater. Again, I'm going back to the import bill. I do not understand why we still need to import food. I do not understand why we still need to import electricity. We've got so much coal here. We've got so much sunlight.
Yeah.
And let's be players.
Yeah.
Let's not look at somebody to come and do it for us.
Yeah.
Something that you actually just said on, we need to be ready to embrace technology. I know someone who posted something around the 4IR, and they couldn't, for them to collect their payment, well, what was it? I think it was the purchase order. they had to physically drive to the government office because they didn't have a fax machine and email was not an option. So it's a thing of little things like that. And we're constantly having this conversation, but we can't even bring ourselves into an email.
Right. But you know what it is? Like I was saying, it's when you put people in positions of leadership, we really have to create this expectation, even from our side as the society, that we are tired of accepting mediocrity, right? And that we need to challenge ourselves to, be utilize things at an international standard, or at least try and be as efficient as possible in that regard. So what is needed there is bold decision making. So as a country, we always talk, and secondly, we always come up with solutions. This we know. We know the solutions to all of our problems, right? It's only that COVID-19 has actually come and exposed these things. So what is stopping us from making all these changes, such as, creating a system or purchasing system, it's probably digitalized. It just takes one person making that decision to say, let's do it. Okay, so there's a lot of things that I think just need bold decision making that need to happen.
I think.
Just a second, so bringing you back into the conversation, we were looking at solutions and low-hanging fruit. Can you please pitch in there, and if you could if some of your solutions could be on how we can review and contribute to the new social contract, or just the betterment of the current social contract.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. The questions that you are asking, and the questions that you are forcing us to ask ourselves, really, they to interaction with institutions, with leadership, with systems themselves, and I was like, it goes back to the people, us as citizens, knowing how we need to change our mind moving forward in our interaction with these things, the leadership, institutions, and the systems that we have in place. But it also takes a particular kind of mindset, indoctrinated in a way, if I may use that word, by the education system that we have. Are we thinking men? I've been thinking the past 3 days about, are we really regarded as thinking men in Botswana? Like when our leaders deal with us or interact with us or engage, even looking at what has been happening in Parliament, are we regarded as thinking men? Do we regard ourselves as thinking men? And thinking men, not saying we don't have a mind, we don't think, but really where we are conscious of who we are, where we want to go. Because if we know who we are, where we want to go, and why we want to go there, it will determine then what we need to do in our interaction with the systems we have, in the institutions we have, and the leadership that we have. Because our leaders will always be there, right? Our leaders will always treat us the way they want to treat us because maybe it works for them. But when we change the way we interact with them moving forward, then they will be forced to change. And I guess invariably, they will be forced to change how our institutions also work. So the solutions are really in us, but it will take an intentional, concerted effort of a few who are enlightened enough to intensely and intensively do the necessary in invigorating a certain kind of thinking that will create a movement that will push a certain kind of interaction with the systems we have, the institutions we have in dealing with the leadership that is in place to facilitate whatever we need to get to where we want to go. Changing government won't happen overnight, right? So it is now asking ourselves, how do we have what we want and what we need? The education system that we have gotten, some of us are lucky that we think the way we do, but it can be so crippling. And if it is 80%, and our literacy rate is just about reading and write, or writing and reading, and doing basic mathematics, then that is a lot. It's 80%. It is a lot. So the 80% education that we get from our government produces the people that we have. It produces the people that engage with the leadership and institutions and systems the way we have been engaging with the institutions we have and the leaders that we have and the systems that we have. So moving forward as a solution, it is how do we, using the COVID, because COVID has really put a spotlight on our inequalities and our inadequacies and our contradictions. A group of people working together, figuring out in the different, be it in politics and economics, in our the way forward. We're going to be asking ourselves the same questions in 10 years because we still have the same people leading the same institutions with the same systems that have not changed. We'll talk about the social contract without having changed people's mindset. And we're going to be talking about the same thing in the next 50 years. So education and a few people figuring it out. And we have just a window. We have a window of 3 years, I believe. A few people figuring it out and pulling in some people in different areas, agriculture, economics, politics. Yeah.
So start that conversation. I really like that. Start that conversation, get minds going. Not necessarily give people answers, but just trigger, just become the trigger. Sow that seed. If it grows, it will grow. And watch where it goes. And then what I really like about your solution is the practicality of it. It's a thing of these conversations can happen on your Twitter, your Facebook, via WhatsApp. It's just asking questions,
Definitely.
Write in your WhatsApp status if there's something that you think is something that we need to interrogate. Then, put it out there. What do people think? Would you like to weigh in?
Thanks, Pusara. You have to love disruption. We were just talking casually earlier about the World War, the Great Depressions, the baby boomers, the dot-coms and all that. And now we've got the COVID. COVID says we've been too relaxed and this is not going to take us anywhere. And I didn't want to use fancy words here, but what she's talking about here is we need a national strategy. I mean, we've had a few documents and everything. We need a national strategy or an Africa strategy. I don't know. Places like Dubai are not Dubai because of a miracle. China is taking the world. It's not a miracle. Malaysia, Singapore, all these guys had to go sit and say, hang on, where are we going, guys? And they made bold decisions that some people may not like. But now that's one part of it. First is we have that conversation when we make this bold decision. We say this is what the future is going to look like. We put the matrix of quality of life now that we want to see in 2036 as we always talk. However, we need to also move from that document and be the thinking men that she says we should be, and then become the action men and women and make it a reality.
Vince, would you like to weigh in?
I'd just like to maybe just highlight the 5 priority areas that have been mentioned by the World Economic Forum regarding the Great Reset and what they are. I don't know if I think that's an opportune time to do that. The first one is redefining a social contract, which I think is the key crux of what we're discussing here today. But essentially what it means is that people that are in government at this particular point need to understand that they have a greater responsibility more than ever, to be accountable to their people, right? So this means strengthening the integrity of our institutions, right, such that they're able to keep us accountable, keep each other accountable, because as you might know, one of the biggest problems of the 21st century is corruption. So if an institution is trying to take down a big fish who has been corrupt, the effectiveness, or at least the outcome of them being able to do that, is heavily dependent on Are they backed by society? Are they backed by government, right? And those are the things that help us also be as ordinary citizens in the community, be able to trust our institutions. If I say I'm not going to call the police even when there's a break-in into my house, that means I don't trust the institution. You understand what I mean? And what you see in the modern community in Botswana is that there's a heavy lack of trust of the institutions. You understand? The second point is digitalization. Okay, fancy word for fourth industrial revolution. I don't like it when we use buzzwords, but these things are things that are necessary. I'll commend, for instance, the Ministry of Trade for launching the online business registration system. It's one step in the right direction, right? I used to ask my friends back in the days, why do I need to go to SIPA to register a business and then drive to my home village to the council to get a trade, apply for a trade license, and then wait 2 weeks for an inspection because there's no proper system, where they can easily check if other people are booked on the same day, and then I'll have to go to what's the other one, PPADB, to apply for this and this. You understand that these, I have to make 5 ID copies, for if I want to start a business in this country, right? So those are things that I think we need to move quickly and take up. The third one is the role of companies, right? The role of companies, that private companies need to understand something called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Don't just chase the profits. What are you doing for the society that you exist in? In our country, if I ask you, what small company has grown to become a multinational company in the last 20 years, right? You're going to count less than 15 companies. I don't want to mention them by name, but if in 20 years we've only produced 15 companies that have grown to multinational, that means the private sector is not growing. That means we're not creating jobs, right? And now we're in a recession. That means more retrenchments are loading. The need for global cooperation, I spoke about it. And then lastly is the green economy, that we need to make sure that to create that sustainability, we leverage green technology. So those are our 5 key priority areas.
Okay, thank you for that. So our time is just about up. Once again, thank you so much to everyone who's streaming on Facebook. Please join in via the comments. In taking your closing words, please keep it rather brief. Our lovely audience has been so gracious as to be patient with us and tune in for the conversation. Husetso, do you want to go first with your closing words? So the key takeaway that you'd like someone to take from our conversation.
Yeah, what I can say is, was it Nelson Mandela who said that the time is always right to do what is right. I think what COVID is doing, no matter how tragic and a crisis it is giving us an opportunity to really look in and figure out what needs to be done right. But we can't really do what is right for the people, especially if we're to put the people at the center of anything that is good, of any public good, without looking at the global level, the institutions that we have that own the means of production, that own the rules of the game, that own the rules of the institutions that impact our lives. If at that level, we can't even interact in a way that ensure that people are at the center of development, then we are lying to ourselves, not just here at the national level as a country, but actually globally. We are globally lying to ourselves. So it has got to really start at the world, at the World Economic Forum level. Talk to your peers about the institution that we have, about the trade agreements that we have, the trade policies that we have that affect a coffee farmer somewhere in West Africa, that affect a farmer in Botswana who rears livestock, that affects that person who's got chickens. It goes down to the kind of education we end up having and feeding our children, because maybe someone is making profit in having a particular kind of education in a particular country. When we talk about global cooperation, it means somehow we are envisioning a common future. But how can we talk about a common future when there are so many inequalities and when some countries face the biggest and greatest odds, they can ever have in life. So the Great Reset really, for me, goes back to the individual. What can we do in the little time that we have to provoke and evoke and invoke a certain kind of mindset for people to interact differently with the people they have around them, with the institutions that they deal with the systems that govern their lives, and really it starts with the people. How disruptions are a good thing. What I can say is let us have the audacity to disrupt moving forward and take advantage of this Great Reset. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Bisetso. So what I took from that, have the audacity to disrupt, and secondly, be the change you want to see. It has been said a lot, but still we need to go back to that. Be the change you want to see.
Yeah, in my closing, I'm going to go back to disruption. It came at a timely time. We don't have this COVID thing. I'm still saying there's so abundance of opportunities here. Food production, medical, you name it, supply of services. We need to get new skills. Let's move from too much of certificate. Let's do capacity. Let's develop our capacity. And to the system, I still think we need to jealously guard what is ours. I think for quite a number of years, we have exported our wealth. We need to keep our wealth here, circulate it amongst ourselves, and make things happen. And to you, the shapers, I'm putting a challenge to you. If I'm to come here next year, I need a storyline. I need you guys to go and pick a meaningful projects in the society. And next year when we come here, I want to say, or you to say, we've been to this village, or we've been here, and we made it. Yeah.
So Shapers, consider this the call for project proposals for meaningful projects within the community. Thank you so much for that. Vince?
Right. So for me, there's just to highlight that there are three things in the situation that we're in. Restraint, that's the first one. We need to contain this virus first and foremost. And what do I have to say about that? I'd say we're really trying as a country, and I hope we continue to try and contain the virus in as much as we've tried to do. Second phase of that would be, after containing the virus, we have to go into recovery mode now, because everything has been disrupted, in your words. All systems have been basically rendered null and void. So in our recovery, that is when we need to now look at the data and the statistics and be informed in our policy decision making, right? Now, as part of that recovery also is, we also need to be bold and directional in our decision making. So that speaks to the governments as well as to the private sector. And then lastly would be the reset. We need to change the way that we do things. So if you are in a position where you have the ability to make decisions, try and make sure that you look at things from a perspective of, how many people will this impact? How quickly does this need to happen? And then, ensure that it happens.
Okay. Execution, make things happen. Thank you so much, Bisetso. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness.
OG. Oh, you just said my name, OMG.
Thank you so much. Oh, OMG. And thank you so much, Vince, for joining us in the conversation. If there's anyone who was part of the conversation today who would like to know more on the Great Reset, what it is, and what you can do about it, please feel free to Google it. There are videos on YouTube. There's a bit of information on our Facebook page, and there's also podcasts on it. I follow it via podcasts. Thank you so much to Stageworks for making this possible. Thank you so much to Studio 1957 for giving us the support to make these dialogues possible. Like I said, they're an 11-part series, and we'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you for your patience, and see you at the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.